This is the last chapter of Bhikshuni Ordination in Taiwan. If you have a desire to hear more about it, you'll have to come to the Abbey and go for a walk with me. Today I thought I'd focus on the highlights and the really touching moments that will stay with me forever, like all those other moments that I spoke about. But I thought I'd just talk about the 3 ordinations and then other things that came to my mind that were really just very touching. So the ordination training started on, let's see, what day was it? February 22nd. And from that evening, we were geared towards the first ordination, which is Shramanarika ordination. And this took place as a group, and we were all very well rehearsed. And I was very impressed with the amount of memorization that the Mandarin speakers had to do the whole time. They had to have everything memorized. And of course, you know, in my case, I was just sort of singing along, doing vowels. And there were certain moments in the ordination where I had to have the Mandarin memorized, but it certainly didn't compare to what the other people had to do. So it was a very lovely morning. And then at lunchtime we had this surprise gift from some lay people. There was a catered lunch. And so there was this very delicious, beautifully laid out food for us. And there were these little boats made out of leaves with fruit in it. It was really spectacular. And so midway through the meal, everyone was in a very festive mood. The translator came up to me and she said, she looked very serious. And she came up to me and she said, "I need to talk to you at the end of the meal." And then she walked away. So you know how my mind has been in the other moments I've related. 2 things came immediately to mind, and I'm going to show you this little button again. I had this button with me in the suitcase I'd pull out every now and then. It says, "Don't believe everything you think." But of course, I forgot about that button most of the time. So the first thing I thought was, okay, my parents, one of them has died, maybe both of them have died. They're elderly. My dad almost died in December. I went to Canada for that. So I thought, this is it. How am I going to deal with this with my sister? You know, my mind was just spinning. And then I thought, oh no, maybe if they haven't died, they're actually asking me to leave because I'm just doing so poorly. And so there was my mind thinking, you know, I'm either out the door or I have to deal with one of my parents who's died and my sister and my family. So that's pretty much the state I was in as I was preparing to go and meet the translator. So I walk up this set of stairs and, you know, I don't know what to do with my mind except just hang on. And then I see the translator and she's smiling now. And she says, "Someone very special has come to talk to you." So I thought, well, the special person is the abbess and she's asking me to leave. So as it turns out, Venerable Heng Ching had driven with the abbess and the upadhyayika and their driver from Puyi Yuan Temple that day to come and have a visit with me to see how I was doing. And so for the case of Venerable Heng Ching, the one-way trip for her, because they had to go and get her in Taipei, was 3.5 hours one way. So she traveled 3.5 hours to get to Fayun Temple to have a chat with me and find out how I was doing. And then she got back in the car. This was a 15-minute visit because this was happening during the nap time. So I was released from nap time for this special visit. So she went to the trouble of traveling for 7 hours to check in and see how I was doing. And I was just over the top. I was just over the top. I couldn't believe this kindness. And then she did something very helpful that day. She reminded me about how lucky I was and how fortunate that, number one, I had a translator and that there were books written in English that were explaining what was going on, because she knew that Venerable Children had neither of those things going for her when Venerable Children ordained in 1986. And actually, I was thinking of Venerable Children every day that I was there, and this was just a very helpful reminder. And she just told me, that, for the next ordination, which was the most important one, the Bhikshuni Ordination, just to, keep an open heart. And then she left, and that was that. So, that was pretty spectacular, and that was very helpful for my mind because I was just starting to get sick that day. I'm not going to go into my getting sick story. So I'm going to go to the next one, which was the actual day of the Bhikshuni Ordination. And I think for everyone who has been through this is like the day, which is just so incredible. Because by this point, we've again been rehearsing a lot. Everyone by this time knows really what is important, what you need to have in your mind. By now we're wearing 3 robes, and they've got us all clamped in and buckled in so that there's no chance of these robes flying off. And everyone knows what has to be said at a certain time. So, there was a feeling of confidence. And we're also, in this time, in our groups of 3. So we've been rehearsing with 2 other people, known as 1, 2, and 3, for about 2 weeks. And so this is our little family group. And there's all of that bonding that goes on. And so I clearly remember waiting to go in, first of all, to see the nuns. So you go in to see the fully ordained bhikshunis first for this part of the ritual. And seeing all the groups lining up, and everyone is looking very poised and very focused, but everyone looks, not sort of heavy, but just very poised and, radiant, really. And just seeing people go in their groups. And then the actual thing of going in, and in our case, when our group of 3 was just about to go in, the translator rushed over and said, now remember, you've got to open that and you sit down at the sitting mat as fast as you can, because everyone else is doing it too slow. And at this point I thought, it's going to open at the speed it's going to open, because I'm going to do what I need to do, and I know what's important. So I just sort of left that advice aside, and we went in, we had this experience, and it was just indescribable. And then we had to wait a certain period of time, and then we went into the Buddha hall, where we again were in front of now 10 fully ordained nuns and 10 fully ordained monks. So there's this panel of 20. Then there are all these other people in there, and there were photographers. And it was the same thing. So this is hours later. Again, someone rushes up and tells us what we need to do, which is totally irrelevant to what we were about to do. And fortunately, all of us were just, we're just in our place. And we went in and had this experience, and the ritual took place, and it was just, those things are imprinted, I'm sure, on all of our mind streams in this life for sure, very deeply. And so when this part of the ceremony was finished, we all left the hall, and I could see that everyone was just in such this celebratory mood, and we could look around the room and see that everyone in this room has committed themselves to taking on these precepts for this lifetime, for the benefit of all sentient beings as well as we can. And that makes me cry. Anyway, it was very touching. Okay, I have to get myself together here. Oh, the other thing that was so cool, I'm not getting it together yet, hang on. Oh, darn. The other thing that was really, really touching was I would look around and see there were many, many people in their 20s. And I thought, wow, this is incredible. People in their 20s have come to this decision, and they've got possibly another 60 or 70 years to dedicate their lives to, benefiting all beings. And then on the other side, I saw all of these people there were quite a number of them who were elderly, like very old. And this was a very demanding schedule that we were living for 32 days, and I could see that it was, it was hard on me. It was even hard on the 20-year-olds, because they told me. So what is it like when you're 70 to do this program of, constant prostrations, getting up early in the morning? There is the mandatory nap, which I'm sure thrilled those people. But, it was a very, very demanding schedule, and I thought, wow, incredible that these elderly people are doing this now. And whatever time they have left, they'll benefit people. And in their future lives, they're setting themselves up so beautifully. So that was very striking. Then I'll have to, let's see. Then a few days later, after the Bhikshuni ordination, Fayan Temple did not have an area big enough to photograph everyone. So we went on a little walk, well, a big walk, down the mountain to a park in the little town of, well, village of Dahu. So we walked to this park, and there was a building that had steps. And again, everyone was very festive. That day it actually warmed up, and the sun was shining, and so we had our photograph taken on the steps in front of this building. So that was great, because we actually got to visit with each other on the way down a bit. And then another very memorable day was we went on an alms walk, and the sun came out that day too. And everyone by this time was wearing their gold-colored robe, and we were wearing these, straw hats that you've seen pictures of. We had our alms bowl, and from the moment that we left the monastery, these people were lining the streets. They had put out the word that we're going on the alms walk, and people were lined up with fistfuls and bagfuls of bills and coins. And I've never seen anything like it. The streets were lined in certain areas with people just so happy to make these offerings of money, and in their mind they're creating merit, which they are, and just this happiness that exuded from them in being generous. And so we got into the village of Dahu, and then we got on these very fancy buses, and they bussed us into the city of Maioli, and they must have put out the word there, because again, certain streets were lined with people. So that was just absolutely incredible. So the last day was the day of the Bodhisattva vows. This is back at Fayun Temple, and we're in our gold robes, and now we're in this area also with about 500 lay people also taking the Bodhisattva vows. And so when you're doing something that important with that number of people, and this is now day 32, and everyone is completely exhausted, when you're in that state, I think we're all so open that, there's no resistance to anything that could possibly happen. And that happened to be an extremely cold day. It was so cold that everyone was having trouble working their fingers trying to make the sitting mat unfold and things like that. But everyone was just, at this point it didn't matter. This was it. This was the final ordination. And it was incredible. So I'm grateful for the hard parts, believe it or not, and the gifts.